What is going on, Trash Talkers? We are back with another episode for you. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Charles Oliveira versus Dustin Poirier, giving you our predictions for this fight. All that and much more coming your way right now! All right, Nick, UFC 264 is now behind us, and we saw Dustin Poirier get the TKO victory over Conor McGregor in the main event, obviously with the Doctor Stoppage. The whole thing has been laid out in front of us. We all understand what happened. Now, we have to take a look. We talked about a couple days ago what's next for Conor McGregor, and really what's next for Dustin Poirier. And I think everybody understands that Dustin Poirier was already ranked as the #1 contender. He had to fight Conor McGregor for this trilogy fight. Now, full sail ahead. All eyes are set on Charles Oliveira and the lightweight title. I believe that Dustin Poirier, when it's all said and done, will be fighting Charles Oliveira for the title in the relatively near future.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this is not a fight that has been officially announced yet, but we all know it's going to happen. Dustin Poirier has been listed as the #1 contender for, it seems like, a year now, and he still has not fought for the title. With everything that has gone on with Khabib not relinquishing the title and then retiring and giving up the title, and then, at that point, we had Poirier McGregor 2 coming into the works, and then that left Chandler versus Oliveira for the vacant title. Now Dustin Poirier has finally earned his right to fight for the title, and when we look at this fight, Dustin Poirier coming off of 2 major wins over Conor McGregor, and he's looking better than ever. He looks like he's getting better with every single fight. He looks very calculated in there. He looks extremely composed. He's ready to take on the biggest of tasks. I believe that Dustin Poirier is 100% ready for a title fight, and he's going to make the most of it. For Charles Oliveira, he's a guy who's ready to defend his belt. He had a massive win over Michael Chandler, a highly touted lightweight that came over from Bellator, had a huge knockout over Dan Hooker leading up to their fight. And then Charles Oliveira, known as the submission specialist, one of the deadliest men on the ground, he knocks out Chandler. I just can't believe that Charles Oliveira is a guy that no one really talks about, yet is one of the most lethal guys in the UFC altogether. He is extremely tactical on the ground. No one is getting this guy to the ground and keeping him there, and if they are, they're the ones in trouble. Charles Oliveira has shown that he is a massive threat on his feet as well. There is no holes in this guy's game, and I think that's what's going to be the biggest challenge for Dustin Poirier. When these guys face off, Dustin Poirier is going to have to make sure he is on his A game. He is taking this fight as seriously as he did against McGregor all 3 times, because Dustin Poirier is going to have his hands full. To me, Charles Oliveira is honestly a better fighter right now than Conor McGregor is, and it's going to be a bigger task than Poirier has had to handle as of recent. Overall, I just think that Dustin Poirier is ready to take on this task, but he's got to make sure he's elevating his game even more, because Charles Oliveira is something he has not had to face yet in his entire career.
Yeah, I mean, Charles Oliveira, you mentioned it, known as the submission specialist, and then all of a sudden he shows that he can do it standing on 2 feet. He can knock out some of the best strikers that we currently have in the UFC. And when we take a look at the landscape of the lightweight division, when we take a look at the landscape of the UFC as a whole, some of the biggest names, some of the most known entities that the UFC has to offer come from this division. You're talking about the Charles Oliveira's, the Dustin Poiriers, the Conor McGregor's, Michael Chandler's, and don't forget about the Tony Fergusons of the world. I mean, Justin Gaethje. I mean, there's so many massive names that we haven't even begun to really unload here, but when it's all said and done, Charles Oliveira is the champion of this division. He is the champion that holds the belt. He is the guy at the top. And listen, it's lonely at the top. Heavy is the crown, as they say. And at this point, Charles Oliveira is going to have to defend his title. It's not going to be against Michael Chandler. It's not going to be against Conor McGregor. It's going to be against Dustin Poirier. And if we've seen anything from these guys, Dustin Poirier is very quiet leading up to these fights. He has shown in his trilogy with Conor McGregor that he has learned to just negate the noise. He tunes everything else out when he's training. When he's in camp, it's all about the focus on the next fight, on what he needs to do to come out victorious. And at the end of the day, you're telling me that Dustin Poirier and Charles Oliveira, I'm in, right? I believe that this is a championship fight that we are all excited to see. Now, obviously, this fight hasn't been announced yet as of the making of this video. We are just getting out of UFC 264, but I want to take a look and see how these two match up. So when you take a look at the tail of the tape between these two, when you take a look at everything that they have to offer, what do you see as maybe a weakness that the other one can take advantage of?
A weakness for Dustin Poirier is definitely going to be his ground game when compared to Oliveira. He has a very strong wrestling background going back to his college days, but Dustin Poirier is nowhere near the jiu-jitsu specialist that Charles Oliveira is. And if they're on the ground, he's going to look like a brown belt there. He's not going to look like the black belt that he is. Dustin Poirier is not going to be in the same realm as Charles Oliveira, and that's where Charles Oliveira is really going to strike. For Charles Oliveira, it's really hard to find a hole in his game because to me, Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier, very similar fighters. They love to scrap, they love to brawl, but they're both have wrestling backgrounds, which make them very comparable to each other. The only thing is Dustin has a lot bigger size than Michael Chandler. I think that's the difference that Charles Oliveira is going to have to get adjusted to. He's going to have to learn to deal with a bigger fighter with the same skill set. He's going to have to be wary that he could be knocked out with one single punch. He's got to know his timing. He's got to stay composed. I think as a first-time champion defending his belt, he's got to stay composed. He cannot let the moment be too big for him.
Absolutely, and we're looking at Dustin Poirier, as you've mentioned before, that Dustin Poirier was the number one contender for seemingly forever, and we're talking about dating back all the way back to last year, and he still hasn't gotten a title fight. He hasn't even gotten a look for a title fight. We're talking about the last time we saw a number one contender in this division getting a title fight, it's when the interim champion, Justin Gaethje, was given a gift to face Khabib once he was finally allowed to leave his country during COVID. So, I mean, after everything that was said and done, all the untangling that Dana had to do in this division, we're finally getting on the path where number one contenders are facing for the title, and we're going to be able to set the motion in order for these guys to really get things going within the division. But I believe that Charles Oliveira is somebody that these guys really haven't seen before. You talk about Khabib, I think he, no offense to him, is the closest comparison to Oliveira. Listen, they're in different stratospheres because Khabib is arguably the best pound for pound fighter ever, essentially. But we're talking about Charles Oliveira, who can scrap with the best of them on the ground, and then he can also just absolutely bully you on 2 feet. And that's going to be something to be said when you're taking a look at these guys. They're not going to be able to defend everything. They're going to have to pick and choose what they choose to defend, and he's going to be able to take it away from them. At the end of the day, I believe that Charles Oliveira is extremely strong, and I have Oliveira beating Poirier in a potential fight. I believe that he is somebody that is here to stay for a while, and I believe that he is going to have to be taken seriously once he defeats Poirier, and he can only be taken down by somebody who can challenge him on the ground.
I completely agree with you. I think there really is nobody right now I can see in the lightweight division that's coming close to Charles Oliveira. From what I saw with him against Michael Chandler, who is one of the more well-rounded UFC fighters, he blew him out of the water. He made him look silly and beat him at his own game, which just made my jaw drop when I saw that happen. Charles Oliveira, he is still learning the game, and he is tweaking his game to be better and better each and every day. He has the potential to lead this division for years. And I think, like you said, he is very close to being like Khabib. I think he could have domination in the UFC, in the lightweight division for a long time, like Khabib did. Because he is just going to get better as he faces better competition. He's going to learn from those mistakes that he does make in those fights. He's going to learn new things. He's going to get better. I believe that Charles Oliveira is the real deal. I don't think that Dustin Poirier's heart, his composure, his confidence, I don't think that's just going to be enough. I think that Poirier is definitely getting stronger as a striker, but I don't think that he's been tested enough on the ground in the last few fights, especially when you look at the two Conor fights where Conor doesn't like going to the ground. Charles Oliveira is going to take advantage of that rust that Dustin has on the ground. He's going to want to bring him to the ground and then put him in a bad situation where Charles feels extremely comfortable. He feels extremely secure with any position he's in. And Dustin Poirier is going to have a lot of trouble if they're both on the ground. Dustin Poirier really only has one shot at winning this title, and that's by knockout or TKO. I just don't think that Charles Oliveira is going to put himself in those situations where Dustin is going to have that opportunity. I believe this fight will mainly be taking place on the ground, and it's going to be domination by Charles Oliveira. Like you, I also have Charles Oliveira beating Dustin Poirier in this fight.
Yeah, and you know, I get that again, we're comparing Charles Oliveira and Khabib, and you know, that's technically not fair to Khabib, but at the end of the day, the last time Dustin Poirier faced somebody that was better than him on the ground, it was Khabib, right? And he lost that fight in September of 2019. He was submitted by Khabib, who was a better ground specialist than he is. And we went into the Conor McGregor fight thinking that, you know what, he had the edge, he's the better wrestler, he's got the wrestling background, he's going to have the ground game advantage on Conor. Well, he comes in as the underdog on the ground here, and I believe that's going to be his ultimate downfall. I believe that's exactly what Charles Oliveira is going to want to do, is get him to the ground and really try to maneuver his black belt jiu-jitsu away from him. And at the end of the day, I just think that it's going to be too much for Dustin Poirier to handle.
One thing I do want to see, though, is if Charles Oliveira does win this fight against Dustin Poirier, I need Khabib to come out of retirement. He needs to have his 30th professional fight. It has to be against Charles Oliveira. He has demolished the entire lightweight division except for Charles Oliveira. And I think Khabib may be a little scared. And that's why he decided to leave the UFC a little bit early. He knew Charles was on the rise. He knew what he was capable of. He knew that was his biggest threat. And so he decided to leave a little bit early. But they need to put this to bed once and for all. If Charles does beat Dustin Poirier, we need Charles versus Khabib.
Yeah, just remember that I wasn't the one who said that Khabib was scared of Charles Oliveira.
Scared.
Yeah.
Frightened.
Right.
Terrified.
All right. Well, with that being said, thank you all for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, hit that notification bell. We go live every single day. That'll be all. Peace and love.